Hello and welcome. I'm Joe Zone. We're on WFSB Plus today with Caroline Ducharme, who has a story to tell about her remarkable recovery. Most of it complete, I think, but still in process. And Caroline, welcome to WFSB, and we want to tell your story. I want to start from kind of the end, middle end, February 22nd. Coach says, "You want to go in?" And I just wondered what was going through your mind at Butler. You're on the road. What was going through your mind at that point?
Yeah, it was definitely overwhelming. I think I probably felt like every emotion. I was so excited. I was really nervous, but I think I felt ready, and I was just excited to be able to have, my parents flew out last minute because, we weren't really sure exactly when it would happen. And so they flew out last minute. They were there. My teammates were all so excited. I think, honestly, they were, the whole time on the bench tapping me like, "Come and see what's coming." I'd be like, trying not to think about it. And then, yeah, he finally was like, "Do you want to play?" And I was like, "I do."
And I remembered because from several of the home games leading up to that, you were out there, you were working out, you were a stretcher, and those of us in the media were saying, "Is this the night she's going to play?" Now, that's kind of the end of the recovery to get back into a game, but it all started back in 2022 where you got popped in the nose at the DeBall game. At the time, you thought it was just another one of those routine hits you take playing basketball.
Right. Yeah, that was the first hit, and I don't necessarily think I ever would have thought that it would turn into all of this because, the first hit wasn't the worst, wasn't, anything really until, they just continue, and then, yeah, here we are.
Yeah, it was a two-year journey for you, and along the way, I think about like somebody gets an ACL tear, you break, there's a process, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this, there's an end to it. With this concussion protocol that you were in, there was no there was never an end. You would think, explain what that was like. You just kept getting more and more, and it had to be frustrating.
Yeah, I think that was one of the hardest parts because, I've had my fair share of injuries before the concussions. I tore my ACL, I had labrum hip surgery, so I kind of knew what rehab was supposed to look like, and I'm very, kind of black and white. Like, I like to have a structure. I like to know, when things are going to get better, what the next step is, check the box and move on. And with the concussions, it was never like that, and I think that was probably the hardest part because I just never knew. One day I could wake up and I felt great, and I felt, maybe I'm turning a corner, maybe this is getting better, and then it could be, within the hour that, it started to go downhill, and then, you're kind of set back from the progress that you've made. So it's been very up and down, and also a lot of times with the rehab, you can kind of always, outwork the rehab, and whatever, however frustrating it is, there's always something you can do. There's always, more reps you can do, more strengthening you could do. But with, with your brain, a lot of times most of the rehab is just resting, and that can be hard.
Were you diagnosed right away with a concussion? Did you know early on that you had a concussion?
After the first hit, no, because it definitely didn't sink in. I came out at first, but then I finished the rest of the game. I felt pretty good. It wasn't until 24 hours later that, I noticed something, but it wasn't, I don't think it was necessarily a concussion at that point. And then, once you have one, it makes it so much easier to get more.
And this is something that, I don't know if people realize this, we're talking almost 4 million concussions a year, and I think female athletes are even more prone to concussions than male athletes are. But your symptoms, they would day to day, minute to minute, hour to hour, they would change.
Yeah, I think, like you said, concussions are so prevalent right now, especially in sports, but you never really think that that's going to happen to you. I think growing up, I knew people with concussions. I knew people that, struggled, but I kind of just, I never thought that it would be me, and I never thought that that'd be something that I would have to deal with. So I hope, that people can, look at my story and be able to, have somebody to turn to when, I didn't necessarily have that.
I want to go a little bit through your story, the step-by-step process, because for a long time, you just weren't getting better.
Yeah, it was definitely slow at times. Over the last 2.5 years now, there were definitely times where I didn't know if I would come back. I think the worst of that would be the year that I took completely off my junior year. And, you know, I never wanted to sit out, and I think, you know, that was kind of what made it last so long before I decided like I finally needed to, you know, take some time away. But when I took time away, you know, I always said like I wanted to come back, but in the back of my mind, you know, it was always the thought like, I don't know if I'll be able to. I don't know if I truly, you know, will be healthy enough to. And
yeah, if you're not getting better and you're feeling these symptoms day to day,
right.
off and on, not knowing which day is going to cause what things, I can imagine you don't see any light at the end of the tunnel.
No, for a while I didn't, no.
And then something big changed for you. You got a recommendation to go to a clinic in Florida. I think there's like maybe 3 in the world, and this is where things changed dramatically for you. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we were in contact with Joe Maroon, a neurosurgeon with the NFL, and he had recommended, you know, at this point we had pretty much tried everything at school, and we were talking to every specialist. You know, my parents were reaching out to people. My athletic trainer at school was doing all the research she could do, you know, reaching out to people. And I felt like at school I had kind of just, you know, outused all the resources that they had, and we needed a specialist for, you know, the actual brain rehab, and it's because it's very different than your regular, you know, injury. And so we got in contact with Joe, and he recommended going down to Aviv. And, you know, at first I honestly, when we went down to visit and do like my assessments, I honestly was like, well, my case is not going to be severe enough that I'm going to need this. Like, I'm not going to need all this. Like, I'll be fine. Like, I'll be okay in a couple months. And then I was kind of in denial, and then we got my results, and it turned out that, you know, I had, you know, severe like post-traumatic concussions, and that I would really benefit from their treatment. And, you know, as hard as it was to see the results and see how much my brain had changed over the last couple of years, it was definitely the first time I felt like there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and that there was, you know, something out there that could really help me.
What was the treatment like during that? I mean, what were some of the things that was unique to this clinic that you hadn't been doing?
Yeah, so the main thing was hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So I would sit in the hyperbaric oxygen chamber for a couple hours a day, every day, and I had a little tablet, and I would play these brain games that were specified to like what, you know, my brain was lacking or what, you know, I needed to improve as I was getting the oxygen. And then, you know, outside of that, I had physical therapists that I was working with there. I had, you know, strength coaches that I was working with there. And then, you know, as I got better, I was able to actually go shoot for the first time and actually go work out. And I mean, it was just a very holistic approach to it. You know, it wasn't just one thing. And I think one of the best parts was that they were always in communication with my trainers and doctors back here too at school. And, you know, Janelle, our athletic trainer, came down to Florida a couple times, met with my doctors while I was there, checked in on me. She actually went through the program too to kind of see what it was like. So it was very all hands-on, holistic approach, and I felt definitely like really taken care of from all aspects.
The thing though that makes it a little scary is it's all unknown, it's all new to you, but talk about support. I believe your parents moved down there for 3 or 4 months to support your teammates. I know visited, I saw a story where Paige came down and the two of you just like sat in the dark for a couple of hours and just kind of held each other, and you had a lot of support.
Yeah, that definitely meant a lot because, you know, down there it was long days, and, you know, I'm used to being physically exhausted from the end of the day, but for this, you know, I was mentally drained every single day. You know, I was just tired, my brain hurt, you know, I didn't want to do anything. And so to have, you know, my family down there, they brought my dog, my cousins came down, my siblings came down, my teammates, friends. And so just, I pretty much always had somebody there to kind of, you know, keep my spirits up, keep a distraction. And, you know, that really, really got me through it.
So at some point, I know with other injuries, there's a point where it's go time. For a concussion and for you, was there a time when you said, okay, it's go time. It's time to, this has worked, and now I got to go and do what I want to do?
I think the first time I really thought that I could play again was probably towards the end of my time at Aviv, because like I said, I was always optimistic, but in the back of my mind, I never really knew if I would come back. And then, one day I went to go shoot, and it was just one of those days where I was like, okay, I think I really can do it. And then I got back to school, and then just being around school again and being around the coaches and, knowing that I had their support and to be able to, work out and be with my teammates again, that's when I was like, I think I can really, really come back from this.
Now, I have to tell you, when we saw you on the floor for the first couple of times, it's like, oh no, there's an elbow. Oh no, there's somebody bumping into her. Oh no, she just went down. I remember doing that with players who have knee injuries when they go down, and are they going to get up or are they going to stay down? So is it possible to put the contact aspect of basketball behind you and now play your game?
Yeah, I think that definitely was one of the hardest things, just to, not even getting hit, but just being comfortable, being in a space where, people are around you and people are near my head. And, that was obviously a really big part of my game was, being able to, drive and be in condensed spaces and stuff. So I think, yeah, when I first came back, obviously everyone I'm playing against in practice, they love me, they care about me, they've seen how bad it's gotten, and they don't want to be, have any part of it. So, for a while I wore the yellow penny and everyone kind of stayed away from me, or I had dummy defense, or a ball would come near me and everybody would hold their breath. And then I think probably towards, the beginning of this summer, the end of last season, I remember I got elbowed in the face, and I turned to Tanya, one of our assistants who's worked with me a lot through my rehab and through my return, and I was like, I just got elbowed in the face and I'm fine. And she was like, I didn't want to say anything, like I didn't want to jinx it, but she was like, yeah, that's a huge step. So just to have that, and then to know that was really what I needed, to get hit and know that, I was good and I wasn't gonna, spiral back into how bad it had gone.
So that means now we can really look forward. You're national champions. How about jumping on that one right at the right time? Yeah. But now people will look at you this year. There's a lot of talk about this team, the people returning. We know you guys lost good players, but are you excited in the role that you will play probably in how good this team is going to be?
Yeah, I'm definitely excited. I think, just coming back was a huge step, and I think nobody really thought, including myself, that I would. So, who's to say that I can't continue to improve and get back to, my old self? That's ultimately the goal. And just through it all, I definitely feel like my role on the team has grown, even if I haven't been playing. Just, being one of the oldest on the team and just trying to continue to have an impact off the court. And I think, that'll definitely transition to help me on the court.
Can I be selfish and ask you if you at a 10 is the best, where are you on that scale right now?
I still would say I'm pretty hard on myself, so I'm not gonna say, I would say I'm probably like a 6.5 right now.
Then there's a lot of growing for you to do this season. Well, it's been great having you here. Your story is an inspiration. I know for people who will watch this who have been through this and maybe not as severe as you, but know there's a way out on the other side sometimes when they're facing adversity. It's great to have you here. We just wish you great luck this season. We'll be along for the ride the whole way. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, we hope that all of you enjoyed this afternoon with our special guest, Caroline Ducharme, back this year after a long, grueling battle with, as you know, we've been talking about these head injuries, concussions. And for more information, check out the website and you'll be able to find out more about concussions. I'm Joe Zone. You guys have a great day.